Good evening, citizens and guests, council and staff. City Clerk, we're ready for the roll call.
Mayor Cernanek.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole. Here. Councilmember Hopping.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Okay, thank you. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Leading us in the pledge this evening are Troops 952, and Troop 355. They meet at the Church of Latter-day Saints on Ridge Road. Okay, Council, in looking at the agenda for this evening, we have 9 items on consent, 1 on second reading, and 1 in general business. And so that we're not confused this evening, or at least trying to alleviate that, have a few comments. One is that the city is blessed with volunteers and resources and with caring citizens that are interested in Littleton being a great place to live, have a business, work, and play. And with that, I want to do some items that are respectful to the agenda in trying to work through the business portion of the meeting, and so taking a look at a framework change that will place some comments appropriately. One is the clerk will actually be taking the time limitations and helping on that front so that the presider can better focus. And in addition to that, there will be 2 places for public comment. First of these will be early in the agenda with a targeted 15 minutes or so, and those comments will be focused on the consent agenda and the general business, for which there is no other public hearing. And then later in the meeting, there will be a time for unscheduled or additional comments that might come in, and those can be of an unlimited variety as far as the number of folks or the time frame that might be associated with that. And going through this, it was one of those things where wanted to get it in place before we had the opportunity to deal with particularly the public hearing that'll be at next meeting relative to the city's 2016 budget. As at least in my opinion, it's probably the largest, or arguably the largest and most important item that the council has to consider each year. And then council, in addition to that, item 7J is being pulled this evening, so we will not see that on the agenda for this evening. And then looking for certification of the minutes.
But where are we here on the agenda?
Certification of minutes.
I have a question on you haven't gone for the approval of the agenda yet.
Oh, sorry. Are there any additions to the agenda?
I would move that we change the agenda, item 5, citizens comment, by removing 6:30 to 6:45 p.m. and remove item 10, which is also titled citizens comment. I would need a second for that to move forward.
You need a second for that?
Yes.
I second that.
So you're removing the additional comments for the evening?
And combining it and removing the time factor on item 5, citizen comment.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes.
Just for clarification, now we had mentioned at the study session that this would be coming up, and that we were going to look at going from 4 minutes to 3 minutes per speaker, and that the time would be kept by the clerk rather than by the presider. And then the idea that there would be 2 meetings, or 2 opportunities during the meeting for citizens to talk, earlier in the meeting and then later in the meeting. And the whole intent, as I understood it, was we've got to get back on track with some of these business items when we have people come into town and to present serious business, or we have a serious hearing. And as I understand it, we would like to try to get on track for basically our business starting at 7:05.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, Jerry, with your suggestion, and my concern was that no citizen coming to the meeting wouldn't have the opportunity to speak, but if we're going to stick to the original intent, your idea would take the time limit off. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, the study session, that was thrown on at the last about 4 minutes of the meeting. We really didn't even discuss it. It was just all of a sudden said, this is how it's going to be. What I'm proposing here, and it's been seconded, is that we remove the time frame, and citizen comments are all made at that portion of the agenda. I think it is important that citizens do have an opportunity. We don't always have a lot of citizens. We do at times. And I think it would be unfair to 1 or 2 citizens who have not had the opportunity to speak, and they have to wait to the end of our meeting. I would rather just have them get up and speak before we have even discussed some of the items, whether it be consent items or general business. If we were to leave in item 10, that means it's all been done, and their comments won't be heard in time for our action. I would rather leave it, again, with all comments at item 5.
Council, other comments or discussion?
So I agree with Jerry, and I think the time limit should be 4 minutes. I was researching the web to see, our city website, to see what we had on the web. And there's a very nice statement on the web, Citizens Guide to City Council Meetings. And part of what it says there talks about public comment, but says council and staff believe that the more involved citizens are in the early stages of policy and legislation development, the better local government can meet the needs and expectations of the community. And there's 2 or 3 paragraphs in there. Then there's a main heading related to public comment, and it says 4 minutes. I think that apart from the president of council asking people not to duplicate what's already been said, they may just say, I agree with so-and-so. It is really important for us to have the opportunity for people to speak during and it's called public comments. Anyway, so I agree with Jerry.
Other comments, council? As I talked about last week, I've done quite a bit of research into this, and one of the items and suggestions and observations is that a lot of different cities handle it differently, everywhere from 0 additional public comments except for what's required for public hearings to placing public comments at the end, as well as limiting them to even 2 minutes. So in going at this approach, that the posted agenda is it's that we would have a targeted 15-minute time frame for items to be considered that evening, which would be the consent agenda items through general business, and public hearings would be held in conjunction with the public hearing section of the agenda. The agenda has been changed a number of times while I've been on council, so having some agenda items changed is not all that unusual. And what we're looking for, or at least from my perspective, is a position where we have an opportunity for folks to actually comment on those items that are going to be considered that evening, and then in support of Jerry as far as looking at other items, those would be subject to additional comments, and those additional comments then would not be looming in front of the general business or the business to be held that evening. And so I would urge a vote no on Councilmember Valdez's motion.
My final plea for this is that...
You haven't been recognized. I'm looking for others if they want to comment.
Fine.
Well, I don't think that this is a restriction of the citizens coming to the council and having their voices heard. I think that what I've seen happen the last couple of times, and probably more than that, but recent past, is when we have some of these public hearings on issues that gather, a sizable crowd or even a moderate crowd, that because by the time we get to those public hearings, many of the people that signed up when they got here at 6:30 for the meeting have left. So we actually are not able to hear from much of the public in those instances, and I think that is an unfortunate event. The other thing is that this isn't the only opportunity citizens have to communicate with us. In fact, it's probably the most limited opportunity to communicate with us. We have, all of our phone numbers and emails are widely available. I know we've all open to meeting with citizens, speaking to citizens, taking phone calls, responding with emails, those types of things. Those can be they're not restricted to 3 or 4 or even 5 minutes. I think those are good, in some ways, a better way for communication and citizens to get some of their issues shared with council. So I think in terms of running a business meeting where we need to get through the business, we're trying to be fair to everybody who's here to speak. I think it adds a fairness to that which was missing prior.
Any other comments, Council? Councilmember Hopping.
It seems to me we're in an area that might call for some flexibility. If we have issues that are pressing, that there's an ordinance coming up that may have drawn a large crowd, we've got a lot of meat in the agenda for the evening. If it's the budget, that's arguably our most important piece of the year, that we limit citizens' comments. And there's nothing that says that we can't give a couple weeks warning and say, hey, we've got so much on the agenda, we're not going to have any citizens' comments tonight. So that should be up to the council's discretion or the mayor's discretion. If we have an agenda like tonight, which I don't anticipate will be a long runner, I don't have any great heartache over letting the citizen comments run until they're done. But if, on the other hand, if we have, and Wendy, maybe the option is that people could declare ahead, and I hadn't paid attention, but do people now give you cards as they come down? Maybe we could collect those in advance, and if we have less than 30 minutes, we go ahead and do it. If not, we defer some to the end. I just like to, I don't want anything to construe that we don't want to hear from citizens. I think that's an important thing. It's not mandatory, but it's something we do here in Littleton. And I think it's important that we do it. And I think it's important that if people want to come and just speak and then leave before we consider an intergovernmental agreement about whose pipe goes to where, they can do that. So I would urge a flexible compromise that allows it to go either way at the mayor's discretion.
Other comments?
Sure.
Councilmember.
Why not?
Yeah, I'm going to support Phil's view on this one. As I've mentioned in the past, I've been to a number of other communities, and I think we are exceedingly accommodating when it comes to providing opportunity for citizens to provide input to our deliberations. And I don't think we're constraining that at all by chopping this up a little bit with the intent of trying to streamline the agenda and keep the business moving in an expeditious fashion. So I think that's reasonable. We tweak this thing fairly consistently every so often. I mean, at one point, comments were at the end, now they're at the beginning, now we're splitting them. I don't think it's a hill to die on. I think we're fine trying this, and let's see how it works.
Jerry.
Yes, again, in my opinion, we have earned the reputation of not being a friendly council, and I think that is evident by a vote back in March, I believe it was, where 70 of the citizens came out and said they wanted control over something because they no longer trusted us to some degree. I think, Bill, Councilman Hopkins, I think you have a good suggestion there, that there should be some flexibility in this, and that's perhaps we should discuss this at a study session on how it can be handled. But for one council member to just say this is how we're going to do it, that's unacceptable. We should have a council discussion about this as a whole, perhaps at a study session. I think using suggestions like that, how can we make it work? I too have done a little research on how council meetings are handled and the agendas and things like that, and it's all across the board. Some of them have 5-minute citizen comments and all that, but as far as comments go, I would like to see this, and I've made a motion on the floor, and let's put her to a vote.
Okay. And regardless of how this goes, in no way does it reflect, in my opinion, upon council not wanting to hear or in any way looking to squelch comments on this. As folks may have seen by our behavior, we've gone out in a number of ways to engage with folks via meet and greets, coffees, showing up at National Night Out, our own town halls, and I know personally I have, on average, about 2 coffees a week with citizens, whether they agree or don't agree with any comments that I have, and I usually cover the cost of the coffee anyway. So with that, council.
I had asked to speak again before we gave other people a chance. So we have a long history of encouraging citizen participation. If people want to speak at a public hearing, offer their view, they can email their view if they think that there may be too long a wait until we get to that agenda item. And that those emails go to the city clerk and are included in the packet of the official comments on public hearings. So that's one thing. I think that Bill's suggestion and Jerry's saying this maybe is something we should discuss at a study session, but I'm not in favor of restricting the citizens this way, because if we have 7 or 8 items on the consent agenda and somebody wants to speak on each one of them, you're not going to get to say very much in the time that's allotted under the new rule. So would you rephrase the vote then so we all know for sure?
Absolutely. And with that, agree with you that there are a number of ways that folks can continue to reach out to us. And as Councilmember Brinkman mentioned, our email addresses as well as our phone numbers are posted on the website. And as we all know, we've received emails. Of course, I always state that our preference is direct them directly to the city clerk so that we all have a chance to see them at the same time as in that. So. Council, we have a motion.
Did you ask for a repeat of the motion?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. So, Council, we have a motion on the floor and a second. The motion is to place all public comments within Agenda Item 5. And
that's not the motion. The motion is that Agenda Item 5, Citizens Comment, remove 6:30 to 6:45 p.m. and removing Agenda Item 10, which is also titled Citizens Comment, and combining it with Item 5.
Okay. Council, you've heard the motion restated. Vote no leaves the agenda pretty much as posted, except with the change in Item 7J, and a vote in favor makes the change to the council agenda.
The vote is 4 in favor, with Councilmember Stallman, Councilmember Cernanek, and Councilmember Brinkman voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
Okay.
Thank you, Council.
So, Council, moving on to certification of minutes, looking for a motion.
I have a motion, and with council's permission, I'd like to take items A through D and combine them into one motion.
Yes, please.
I move to approve, based on the clerk's certification, the September 1st video as the minutes for the September 1st, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council, the September 8th video as the minutes for the September 8th, 2015 study session of the City Council, the September 14th video as the minutes for the September 14th, 2015 study session of the City Council, and the September 15th video as the minutes for the September 15th, 2015 study session of the City Council.
Second.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
I have just one question for the city clerk on this. We're just approving the video, but the minutes, as far as the items that you're sending to us, the emails, where do they go? Is that is a part of this record somehow?
But I'm sending the emails, I'm sorry.
For instance, the emails that we send from citizens that you send to us up into a certain time of day?
They go on to, they're combined with the packet. And
A part of the record, is that?
yes,
Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wait a minute, so then I have a question. So I hear what you just said, but if our minutes officially are just the video, how does that
I
get...
combine them with the packet and then push it back out so that it's still on the website so people
Okay.
could read them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, we have a motion and a second regarding the certification of minutes for items 4A through 4D. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Council, it's now time for citizen comments. This is an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or ask questions that are not part of the scheduled agenda. The opportunity for public comment is now, and an immediate response should not be expected. Anyone who would like to speak during public comment, please complete a green citizen card located at the table at the entrance to the council chambers, and please provide the green card to the city clerk. We expect comments to be civil, and disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. And first up, we have Patrick
I have a process question. Since we've changed it where the city clerk will be keeping the time for the citizens' benefit, how will they know when they're getting close? Can they still see it up front?
Yes, they can see it up front, and if they get close, then I'll let them know that they need to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
She has a whip.
Okay, and we have 3 folks that have pre-registered for comments. Patrick Fitzgerald. And then on deck is Carol Fay.
Have the audio visual. My name is Patrick Fitzgerald. I'm a registered professional engineer in Colorado. I have applied my best engineering judgment to the plans for the Grove and to applicable codes and zoning. Only 3 of its many violations will be highlighted in the time allotted here. You were given last month the importance and legal weight of municipal codes. I give you here the definitions of 2 patterns of government behavior. Anarchy is a societal condition where the citizens are allowed to be lawless. Tyranny is the condition when the government itself acts in a lawless manner. The government of Littleton has acted lawlessly in approving the Grove. The city has cited its prerogative to interpret codes. However, these codes are mathematical formulas giving precise numbers and using precise language, making it clear that there is no room for interpretation or ignoring. Code 10-4-1A4 defines an area of clear sight that must be provided at the southwest corner of Littleton and Bemis. This area does not exist in the illegally approved plan. Codes 10-4-1C and 10-2-16B2 define the amount and placement of unobstructed open space that must be provided along the public rights-of-way in this B2 zone. The plan has been illegally approved with none of the required space along Littleton Boulevard and only a tiny fraction of the required space along Bemis. The great Frederick Bastiat has said that when the law is properly and justly applied, the citizen does not have to fear that his plans and calculations will be upset from one instant to another by the legislature. Littleton citizens have much to fear. This council is a legislative body of Littleton. By the assent of council, again, Bastiat says, the law has come to be an instrument of injustice. It is not too late for this council to reverse that injustice. I invite questions upon my statements here. Furthermore, I invite you to take action against my license if you believe any of these statements to be false or misleading. Thank you.
Those are for, I believe, for determination elsewhere, Patrick. So, next, Carol Fay.
I'm new to this whole thing, coming to city council members. I find myself here more often than I would really like to be.
And state your name, please.
Carol Fay.
Thank you.
I knew what that was.
I'm sure you do.
Anyway, coincidentally, the Oak Brook Shopping Center assisted living facility proposal came up at the same time that I was retiring, so I had time to give to it. I've been trying to figure out, starting then, how to communicate with you folks. I found that sending emails, I rarely get answers. And with this last round with the C470 noise, I eventually, a couple weeks later, got thank you emails from a couple of you saying that my emails went into your spam folders. And so that gives me an explanation anyway. I feel better, I guess, about it going into spam than feeling that you just disregarded what I had to say. I tried talking with most of you at the neighborhood events, such as the Powell meet and greet, and I found again and again, I know you have to tell me that you can't talk about the things I want to talk about, so that's not a place where I can talk to you. I've left phone messages, and I did get a response from one of you, but we couldn't meet until after I needed to ask you about the C470 noise thing because there was that limit in citizen response time. So I don't know how else to talk with you folks other than to come to a council meeting. So here I am again. If I turn out to be the, I guess, sixth person, and I don't know how the order is arranged, then that means I pay another penalty besides having to come to the council meeting just for the privilege of speaking with you. I have to wait another perhaps 3 hours in order to say what I would like to say. It seems you're making it really hard for me. I'm trying to give my time free to the city and help clarify things, make things work better, like the C470 thing noise. It's clear that if somebody's going to get into that, it's going to have to be me. And that's for the good of the city. It just confounds me that you would go to such trouble to make me have to wait another 3 hours to speak to you. So I hope you, in your flexibility, find a way to make this work better for us citizens, because it is unusual for us to come forward and be willing to work for the city. And right now I am, but you could wear me out real fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Atwood.
Good evening. My name is Frank Atwood. I do need the obvious explained to me. On the Grove Development Plan, which is in front of you on page 2 of 21, lower center, what does not a part mean? I would think the developer would simply not show it. Am I missing the obvious? Is this a vanishing fire lane? Fire lanes are not permitted in residential -3 zoning. Again, I do apologize that I need the obvious explained to me. I ask that City Council ask the City Manager, Michael Penny, to have staff produce a report with an analysis of how all applicable code paragraphs were addressed in the Grove Site Development Plan. In summary, unchallenged perception becomes reality. I'm confident that the majority of this City Council welcomes reality. I do expect the majority of this City Council to not be complicit in silencing citizen comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Any others for public comment? Linda, is that you? No? Paul?
All kinds of pointing going on out there.
Good evening, Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I came with a bunch of stuff prepared to talk about consent agenda item J. It's gone away. I'd much rather talk about the Grove. I totally agree with Mr. Pat Fitzgerald. He's an engineer. He knows what he's talking about. He's put his professional license on the line with you folks tonight. There are several things involved in the Grove approval that are totally illegal, like Mr. Fitzgerald says. They're mathematical, they're not open per interpretation, etc. They're even either complied with or not. Currently, they're not. I beg you to reconsider that whole thing. Currently, it's illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
Ready? Doug Clark.
There we go. Sorry.
This chart may look familiar to some of you. The chart comes from the Littleton Inglewood Wastewater Utility Plan and Site Application Report. This report was created by the consultants Brown and Caldwell, hired by Inglewood to justify the $168 million construction project to increase the capacity of the sewer plant from 36 million gallons a day to 50 million gallons a day. The top line on the chart shows Brown and Caldwell's projections of what the flow into the plant would be. The bottom line of the chart I have added based on the actual flows into the plant. Since the expansion has already been built, the issue tonight is, and continues to be, how to pay for that expansion. Capacity increases should be funded by tap fees, which are paid by the developers. Paid by the developers when they connect their new buildings to the sewer system. The tap fees currently in place for the plant are insufficient to recover the cost of the expansion, which was built to handle growth. This means that existing residents of Littleton and the surrounding area have to pay for that expansion in their annual sewer bill, when that expansion should be paid for by developers through tap fees. The tap fees were doubled in 2008, but that doubling was and is insufficient to cover the cost of the project. In addition, there was essentially no new construction happening in 2008. There's lots of new construction happening now. The proposed budget on the consent agenda has, once again, an increase in the annual sewer service charge for each Littleton resident and each resident in the connector district that they pay for their annual sewer service. This, once again, is transferring the cost of growth to existent residents. I urge you to increase the tap fees to cover the cost of the expansion so that the current residents don't have to shoulder both the costs of the growth and the anticipated costs of new regulations on the operations of the plant. I also remind you that the cost of the anticipated new regulations are directly related to the size of the plant. The bigger the plant capacity, the more it costs to implement the new regulations. What I ask is that you don't screw the Littleton residents and the outside connector district customers twice. Increase the tap fees.
Thank you. Sorry.
Linda. Clock still down there? No, they're
Yeah.
for them.
No sewer for me. I'm going to address two subjects.
Your name, Linda, please.
Oh, Linda Knufinke in the 4th District. So I wanted to address the emergency medical transportation fee. So I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what's going on with Medicare and Medicaid. So these are the 4 codes, for lack of a better word. You've got the BLS on the left-hand side. You got the BLS transport, the ALS transport, non-emergent, ALS 2 transport, and the per mileage fee. So if you see the 3rd column, it says Littleton rate, the 1,000, the 1090, 1239, and 17, and then you can see the Medicare rate from 10/1/2015. Or actually that's 10/1/2014, and the difference in the percent difference. So there's a significant difference from the Littleton rate to the Medicare rate. And when we look at the Medicaid rate, which is the 2nd table below, you'll see that the Medicaid rate, there's a significant difference of close to 90% from the Littleton rate to the Medicaid rate. So I just wanted to get that out in front of you. In my next subject, I would like to address the FTEs. The FTEs in the budget, and I apologize that it's so small. So what I did is I took the 2011 to 2016, and I showed all the full-time FTEs. So in 2011, we had 394. My vision's bad, so 397 in 2012. 2013 is 403. 2014 was 406, and 2015 was 412, and 2016 was 436.12. So if you look to the right-hand side, you see that's an increase of 24.12 FTEs. So that is a 10% increase in 2011 to 2016. So I just wanted to ask these questions. Did the population increase so significantly to demand such an increase in FTEs, and how are you proposing to pay for the newly requested FTEs, and can you justify those increases? What's the difference from this year to the previous years? Have fire calls increased? Have police calls increased? So those are all some questions I have about the FTE increases. And then real quick, I just wanted to keep getting back to the fire department overtime. You can see this is they're requesting, the fire is requesting 14 FTEs additions to the budget this year, but you can still see we're on an upward trend with fire department overtime, even though the last couple of years it's better, but we've always talked about the fire department overtime for a long time. And it's the increase in FTEs is not decreasing the overtime. Thank you.
Carol.
I'm Carol Brazak, and I want to talk to you about the item on general business, the loan to lift. But before I get into that, You talk about the opportunity to communicate with each of you, and I agree, we have that opportunity. But sometimes some of us want something to be on the public record. So if you do have some kind of a study session where you're going to discuss any kind of a change in the current operation, maybe you ought to talk about the way our emails can be read into the public record, which would eliminate us from having to be here. So there's a big difference between emailing you about something and coming down here and addressing council. So tonight you have on the agenda an item to approve the third installment of $50,000 to our Urban Renewal Authority. This loan agreement originated in December of 2014 and was to extend through December of 2019. We are 9 months down the road, and Lyft is now before you asking for their third installment. I have considerable doubt that these dollars will ever be recovered, since the loan has been structured so that the city is the last creditor to be made whole. For something that was not supposed to cost the taxpayers any tax dollars, it's just the opposite. We are subsidizing urban renewal with very little prospect of ever being reimbursed. Thank you.
Leah?
Hi, I'm Leah Burkett, 5730 South Bemis Street. Wasn't planning on coming down tonight, but I got a little fired up watching the meeting on Channel 8. So also wasn't going to come down because on the advice of my attorney, I should lay low while the city was looking at my appeal application, which I heard today is rejected, letters in the mail. So I wanted to come down and express my heartfelt disappointment, honestly, that the Board of Adjustment isn't going to hear this, that the city's determined it can't be heard. Now the onus is on the citizens to come up with enough money to get to court for a plan that has been made so clear that it's illegal. And you know, this is people's lives that this plan disrupts. And I'm really just upset that now I feel like I need to move and we need to come up with some money to fight this. And this is not a plan that the citizens want. It's not something that you voted for. And we've showed you over and over again how the Grove doesn't meet code, and it's just so unfair that we're going to have to come up with money to continue to fight this. And ultimately, maybe those fees will be refunded to us, but that's a taxpayer expense for the city to refund those fees for a plan that has been made clear it's illegal from the start. Thank you.
And with that, Council will move on to reports. City Manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you for spending the changing of the season here tonight. The autumn equinox is 4:21 a.m. tomorrow morning, so say goodbye to summer and hello to fall. Even though the summer is over, we're still very, very busy. Littleton Police Department is deployed its 6th full-time school resource officer. You'll recall you approved that additional position. So for the first time, every middle high school has its own officer assigned full-time, and this is in partnership with the Littleton Public Schools. And you probably all recall we split those costs, and so we're both, it's a great partnership, and we're both in that together. The company Northline GIS out of Breckenridge is going to be our consulting partner to develop a citywide GIS strategic plan. You know, we've been talking about this for a while, and we're putting it in place. Project's going to start next week, and we expect a final plan by the end of the year. Erlene Rich in the Finance Department has graduated from the Denver Peak Academy, and she is now our 15th employee to finish the intense 40-hour process improvement and innovation training. Councilman Stallman, thanks for turning us on to that. Mark your calendars for the afternoons of October 21, 22, and 28 for targeted focus groups and open meetings about the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. The Littleton report is going to come out in the next few days, and all the details are in there. The dedication of the Riverside Downs is Thursday from 4:30 to 6:30. You are all cordially invited. We're going to have live music, food, bocce ball demonstrations, and if we're lucky, the longest ribbon cutting across a river that you've ever seen, albeit not very deep at the moment. The Littleton Intercultural Resource Center will be having its naturalization oath and ceremony in this room tomorrow at 5:30. We have 41 immigrants from 22 countries that will be sworn in as U.S. citizens tomorrow. And I believe you are all aware that Littleton is one of only very few communities across the country that are certified by the federal government to naturalize citizens. So it's a pretty big deal for us. And I know Debbie Brinkman had presided in the past. I think, Phil, you've done it as well. And it's a very moving and emotional ceremony to see people become U.S. citizens and take the pride in this country.
Particularly with my grandfather being an immigrant.
Yes. If you've got some available vacation time and some extra cash, you can make the trip of a lifetime with the Bega Littleton Sister Cities Exchange from March 18th to April 4th of next year as our delegation travels to Australia. We can give you more information if you're interested in that. Economic Development received a note last week from an investment company that stated, "We really appreciate the efforts you're making to help us find the right property for our project. It's refreshing to work with people who clearly demonstrate great commitment to their work and who are a pleasure to interact with." The Conflict Resolution Center video and the Littleton History Moment, Danny Dietz, were both award winners at the annual National Association of Telecommunications Officer Conference. I'm sure that was a gripping conference. We received a nice card signed by residents of the South Crescent Drive neighborhood, thanking the city for sponsoring their block party. And finally, we learned today that Littleton has been named the 24th best small to mid-sized city in the United States by livability.com. This is for cities with populations of 20,000 to 350,000. This 2016 ranking is data-driven with more than 40 data points, including amenities, education, sustainability, transportation, housing, and economy. Livability.com partnered with world-renowned urbanist Richard Florida and assistant clinical professor Steve Pedigo from the Initiative for Creativity and Innovation in Cities at NYU School of Professional Studies. One of the comments I said about us was, it seems like there's always something going on in Littleton, a south suburb of Denver. Nearly each week, residents can choose between art walks, concerts, and festivals, including the Western Welcome Week, an annual event that began in the late 1920s. A quaint downtown park filled with shops and restaurants is surrounded by trails that lead to neighborhood parks, lakes, and the South Platte River. There were 3 cities in Colorado, Longmont, Boulder, and Fort Collins, and Littleton in the top 25. And they surveyed over 2,000 cities across the nation in that size category. So that's all I've got tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole?
No comment. Well, actually, I will say, I have been going door to door in various parts of the city, and
Councilmember Cole, keep it to council business, please.
no, I was giving it council business. Okay.
You're also campaigning. So.
This is a source of information. So I've been going door to door and talking to people, and everybody that I meet tells me they love Littleton. They'd like some changes, like streets fixed and so forth, but everybody tells me they love Littleton. So that's in keeping with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stallman.
Attended the September 2nd Library Board meeting. Stimulating. It was very well done, as usual. There's a new circulation supervisor on board. Got a new 50 DVD cleaning machine going. They're going through the entire collection, cleaning the DVDs. It includes CDs, and the machine cleans and restores surfaces. And there are state park passes that can be checked out starting, I think, April, with a display unit that's going to be set up to provide park information. So a very useful resource for people who want to access and take advantage of our wonderful state parks. I wanted to make one follow-on comment with respect to the citizen who raised questions about the Littleton Fire Rescue staff increases. Two-thirds of the staff increases are paid for by the fire partners. So what we're seeing up here a large chunk of that number is a gross number. It's the total, what are called FTEs or full-time employees, but the cost, 2/3 of the cost of those are paid because we've got fire partners and an intergovernmental agreement between Littleton Fire Protection District and Highlands Ranch Metro District, which we provide service to. Chief Armstrong, who's in all respects a professional fire service chief, clearly explained the need for the incremental staff during the budget reviews, and I encourage anybody who would like to go back and look at those reviews. His presentation was well thought out and well presented. But one of the key points is we're actually trying to provide some creative, innovative, and forward-thinking solutions to putting the right resources in the right place given our need for emergency services responses in a timely fashion per our contract with the fire partners. And so a lot of this involves things like resourcing for Medic 10, the Quick Car and the Care Car programs and so forth and so on. So again, all this was clearly explained during the budget process, and absolutely encourage anyone who's interested to go back and look at that segment of our budget reviews, which was conducted on the second day of our of the presentations. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you. I attended a meeting the other night. Some citizens asked me to come by, and this is for the city manager, if you will. Their concern is over on Clarkson, over just east of Littleton High School, where the speed over there is often exceeded. We know it by a lot. But the issue is really over there is that there's also large auto transporters that come from the car areas. But the issue, again, is that it's broken up between Greenwood, Littleton, and even a little piece of Arapahoe County unincorporated over there. So maybe if you could just work with some folks. I gave them your name to call you, and I told them that you would just point them in the right direction. So you can report those things. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Councilmember Brinken.
No report.
Councilmember Hopping.
I had a couple things tonight. I am a hotel consultant. Some of you know that, and I went to the national headquarters of one of the major hotel companies yesterday and learned some things that I think really come back to Littleton and the way the town develops over the long run. One of the most interesting pieces is that hotel company's reservation system. When you call to their call center, they have operators that can speak 18 different languages. Ms. Breezak, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but Littleton Public Schools has 42 native languages, I believe. So let's take that as a minimum, which means there are people in Littleton who speak 24 different languages who can't make a hotel reservation. So that was kind of a sad but observant type of thing. Another thing that happened was relative to design issues, and we've certainly had a lot of comments on the Grove, and as economic pressures mount on Littleton, there will be more developments that come in. The president of the Americas for this hotel company, which I can't name, made a comment about design and how communities were very difficult to work with in terms of getting their products built. So I went up to him and I said, okay, why? And he said the main thing was the length of time it took to get permits. So we drilled into that a little bit. And it turned out that they have looked at design considerations, and one of the longest ones was that 10 years ago, 90% of hotels built were built right out of the prototype. So they came into a community, dropped it into place, and that was what they would do. They got pressure from some communities, mainly out on the left coast, to conform to design guidelines. So you can imagine towns like Carmel or whatever that would really put the pressure on. They slowly started to bend to those, and they had some really unanticipated surprises. One was that they got their permits a lot faster. Surprise. But the number two one was that they made more money with these hotels because they had more of a sense of place of what that community was and how they can modify design to a community standard and make a product that made more money for the developer. And he said now, instead of 90% out of the prototype, it's reversed, and now 90% of the hotels they built are actually modified to community design standards. So I'd like to take that and ask Michael if we could get a study session on this, because we have a lot of design standards that are not binding, and to look at those and see how we can incorporate those into our ordinances so that when we have products that are built, no matter who builds them, we maintain Littleton's character over the long run, and it powers us economically. It's a win-win for everybody. The third piece was a piece of information I hadn't heard, and this relates to generations. We always hear about how the baby boomers buy certain things, mainly wheelchairs now, but Generation X buys other things, and Y buys certain habits, and now the newest generation is the we generation. That's people who are 18 and younger. And what they found is it's not demographics anymore, it's psychographics, that people really have their buying habits based on what they are hardwired to believe in their early life experiences. So that's a different paradigm that they're using in order to design hotel rooms and such, and it's a whole different world out there in that. So I think we need to consider that as we look at demographics and who we're trying to attract to Littleton and how we do it. So those three pieces.
City Manager, would you care to respond about the code and ordinance review that's being undertaken?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a little more specific, and we can cull it out from the main side of the land use review code update. Bill and I have chatted about it a little bit, and I think the specifics around what are those architectural overlays needs to come through that more global process. But the concept around eliminating guidelines and moving them more into an overlay district and requiring architectural requirements, I think, is a good study session for the council to provide direction to the city staff. Because I've heard over the years, I mean, there is some differential in views of whether those should be guidelines and under what conditions should they be structured. It's part of why we have an opt-in district in the downtown. So getting some clear direction from the council around to what extent do you want the districts to be mandates and required by the code as opposed to the guidelines, because Bill's absolutely right. The vast majority of what we have there are guidelines. And there's a lot of language in there that is great and certainly went through the community process adopted by the council. But when you turn it over to, I don't want to just say the word developer because it could be a homeowner as well. It's anybody doing construction. They're guidelines. So to get some clarity on that piece, I think, has value for it.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
At the museum right now is a tremendous art display called Own an Original Best of Show. That was started last Thursday night was the opening of the show. That was the Fine Arts Committee had their meeting also that night. But I want to really recommend this show. We sold 5 paintings at that show at the opening. Oh, I'm seeing more. See, and they were absolutely incredible and very low priced. And so for us to sell that kind of thing at the opening of an art show is really unusual. I've been on the committee for about 4 years and not seen it go like that, so I do commend that show to you. And just one comment, and it's one of those ones that somebody could take a sound bite out of and totally misinterpret. But I really don't think our citizen comments is getting to where we want to get to just as a community and as a council. Because in one way, it is one way. It is a one-way communication, and sometimes there's things that are stated that I know some of the answer to, but I'm by our process not able to respond to. Great examples have been complicated issues, and then later in the council comments, one of the council members tries to address it and set the record straight to maybe something that wasn't properly stated, or be able to answer the question so that the person asking it doesn't go home and feel like they were talking to Mount Rushmore, great stone faces kind of thing. So I really do want us to look at this. I think there are better ways to communicate with council time, because the other side of it is I've had more than a dozen comments from people who've come down and said, gee, I wish you'd hold those later because I had business here to conduct and I ended up waiting, et cetera. And then we watched, perhaps the cigarette hearing was one of them where folks didn't stay long enough because it was after 9 o'clock, so they decided not to have their voices heard. That's not good either. So somewhere, somehow, I think it's something we can look at. And one other final comment is some of the speakers may want to put something on the record, and that may be why they're coming forward to do it, but the communication isn't occurring by putting it on the record, because if there is a response, the response doesn't necessarily get on the record. So it's an unequal communication thing that's going on here, and I don't think it's satisfactory. And that's just my comment.
Thank you. And Brian, could you approach, and Deb, you want to take it? Just give me 1 second. Everything okay, Chief? Okay. Thank you. And then on August 1st of this year, the Littleton Criterium hosted the National Criterium Circuit, which was one of 15 races held over the summer with NASCAR-type scoring. And we had a donated winner's jersey, and Brian Hart of Frame to Art took that jersey after I had it signed by all the winners of the various different races. And Brian would like to present that to, and I chose Deb on this because she's the originator of the Littleton Criterium and bringing that to town, as well as Bill Nagel of Petal of Littleton. So, Brian?
Oh, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Brian Hart with Frame to Art. This March we've been in business 25 years, but I grew up in Littleton. Went to Repo High School and love this area and love the city. So we're right on Broadway, and I wanted to present this to the city of Littleton because I love cycling as well, and I'm glad you have this event every year.
All right, cool. That big old frame.
It's a big old jersey.
No, that's a big jersey.
It is.
That wasn't worn by anybody in the race.
And thank you, Brian, for donating the framing to the city, and appreciate that. And I understand that the city staff's going to find an appropriate location behind some door, but
What?
And
looks like my size.
And so,
Thank you.
thank you, Brian.
Just want to add, thank you, Brian, for this. And I think that, this is an example of the type of community activities that bring more than our community together. And Michael's comments about the, what was it? The livability. The photo that they chose to represent Littleton was a picture of the Criterium as the riders came around. So it's definitely an event that is becoming iconic to Littleton, and this is much appreciated. Thank you for all your support.
And I want to add to Deb's comments. This past weekend, I went through Northeast Colorado, and when folks found out I was from Littleton, whether they were on a developmental team, meaning they're close to becoming a professional racer, or they were out just trying to get through the 160-some miles or so, folks would comment on Littleton being really cool, and it was really nice to hear. And these are folks that don't live in the city, but I was particularly kind of excited by a young man who's about 16 years old. He's on a developmental team, and when he heard, he says, I really like to come to Littleton. So that was kind of a nice comment in support of that. Today was kind of an interesting day, Council, for me to be there. There was a discussion around what we're doing for our youth and career readiness, and listening to President Doyle talk about what ACC is doing, as well as the Lieutenant Governor talking about some of the issues that are coming up with post-secondary education within the state. Also had an opportunity to attend Soldier's Medal Award for Joe Gilmore. Soldier's Medal, I believe, is the highest ranking medal that an individual can receive for valor outside of actually a battle situation. and he received that award, and again, recognizing folks that are within the city that have contributed quite a bit. In addition to that, this afternoon was the kickoff for the Senior Reach program, which is being done through Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health. They're looking for Littleton to step up based on what we've already done with regard to our Aging Well Resource Center and the network of services that are present within the city. And what's really neat about this is it's really trying to stretch out the time for seniors to be in a position where they can live independently at home. And we're all Americans, and we like to be close to our stuff. So as much as that can be supported. And then Project Recycle is also looking for a Littleton school to work with over this next year to take on donated bicycles. They tend to work with Title I schools, which tend to be children in schools of need. And so those were kind of neat things across the age and service spectrum that we've had. And a couple of items that have come, and you may have received some questions about them, but they'll be on some future agenda. We've been requested for proclamations on both sides of the SCFD issues, and you may have been contacted by an organization called FACE that has a number of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 organizations that are looking at the allocation formula, and so pay attention to that. The other is that's come up, and I've had an opportunity to meet with some folks from other jurisdictions around, is taking a look at drones, and a number of cities are looking at trying to put drone ordinances in place sometime before the holiday shopping season so that there's not a proliferation of those items that can provide for an invasion of property, let alone a dangerous situation. And Angela Merkel was startled when she was making a presentation and a drone landed right in front of the podium that she was presenting at. So kind of exciting at that point in time. So thank you, Council. Next up is our consent agenda items. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion, a single simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. And again, 7J has already been removed, not for discussion this evening. Consent agenda item 7A is resolution 63-2015. It's a resolution adopting emergency medical transportation fees. Consent agenda item 7B is resolution 64-2015. This is a resolution approving the 2016 operating plan and budget for the Highline Business Improvement District. Consent agenda item 7C is ordinance 89-2015. This is ordinance on first reading establishing the tax levy of 6.62 mils to defray the cost of municipal government of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2016 and ending December 31, 2016. The note on that is that the second reading would occur on October 6. Consent agenda item 7D is ordinance 95-2015. This is ordinance on first reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2016 and ending December 31, 2016, and again schedules the second reading as well as the public hearing for October 6. Consent agenda item 7E is ordinance 92-2015. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, deleting and replacing section 11 of chapter 6 of title 1 of the City Code pertaining to commitment in default of payment of fine and scheduling the second reading for October 6. Consent agenda item 7F is ordinance 93-2015. This is an ordinance approving a lease with Pacific Office Automation to provide copiers to Bemis Library. Consent agenda item 7G is ordinance 91-2015. This is an ordinance granting an easement to Denver Water for an extension of a water main into Reynolds Landing. Consent agenda ID 7H, ID number 15-242, is a motion to appoint Nancy Hopf, HOPF, as substitute municipal court judge for a 2-year term. Consent agenda item 7I is Resolution 66-2015, resolution authorizing a cooperative agreement with Littleton Housing Authority doing business as South Metro Housing Options. Council looking for a motion on consent agenda items 7A through 7I.
So moved.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second regarding the consent agenda.
Make one comment. Don't want to pull anything, but I just wanted to let you guys know I wanted to commend the folks at Highline Business Improvement District. I did speak with Lisa Jacoby, and they've done a nice job of getting things refinanced. I think that was in the staff memo. But I've pulled it in the past, but I think they've heard our concerns and stepped up the game. And I think a lot of the folks involved are a lot happier.
Okay. I'm sure they appreciate the comment, Bruce.
There you go.
8 off in a year, I think.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Council. The next is ordinance for second reading and public hearing. This is with regard ordinance 90-2015, an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, increasing the salaries of city council members. City Manager Penny or Councilmember Stallman, comments?
Okay.
Not from staff. We did not receive any public comment in between meetings.
And we talked about this at the August 11 study session. I mean, two points here, 3 points. If this is passed, it only goes into effect for new council members who have been duly elected in the future. So this isn't a situation where we're raising our own salaries. It doesn't work that way by state law. You can only get your salary if you go through another election. So whoever's sitting here in November, newly elected, will in fact then be eligible for this. Secondly, salaries were, I went back, I don't know, 18 years. The first salary increase I found in that time frame was 97. It was bumped in 2005, and this had marked 10 years since that last bump. Basically, the increases that are in the ordinance are a range of 1.6 to 2% per annum over that time period. So it was deemed to be a relatively modest increase from an inflation perspective. And lastly, I think the comments during study session, in particular, I think Councilmember Brinkman said it specifically. What we're talking about here is a stipend. I think it's sort of referred to in the ordinance as salaries of city council members, but the truth is it's essentially a stipend that reimburses us for some of the costs that are incurred, or reimburses anybody that's up here.
Did you want to state your hourly rate of stipend?
The hourly rate can be rather low, but that's okay. We're not up here because we're trying to make money. So that's all I've got, unless you've got anything else.
Comments or questions from council? Or looking for a motion, Councilmember Stallman?
Sure.
Public hearing?
You need public hearing.
Public hearing?
Oh, yes, right. I'm sorry. Public hearing. Does anyone have the registry? Sorry. We will open the public hearing at 7:44 p.m.
Thanks, Mike.
And we have 4 on the list for comment. First is Paul Bingham. Do you favor the project? He indicated yes. Paul, do you wish to speak? That's why I said, do you want to speak?
Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I agree with it. You guys need a raise. Thinking about all the flack you put up with from all us folks. Thank you.
Next up is Linda Knufinke. Linda indicated yes support. Next is Pam Chadbourne, indicating yes support. Pam, do you wish to speak? present and saying no. And then anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, close the public hearing at 7:45 p.m. Council looking for discussion or motion?
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading increasing the salaries of city council members.
Second.
Okay, council, a motion and a second is on the floor. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we move on to general business. This is ID number 15250. This is a motion authorizing an advance of $50,000 to Littleton Invest for Tomorrow, also known as LIFT, in accordance with the cooperation and loan agreement between the city and LIFT dated December 16, 2014. Director Reese.
Good evening, Council. Jim Reese, Executive Director of LIFT, and we're here tonight to ask you for another installment. The Council approved the original loan amount of total of $200,000 to be used to actually help LIFT basically complete the urban renewal plans that were underway at the time in December of 2014, and then to begin to implement them. And by implement, I mean get some projects going. So that's what we're actively still trying to do. Once we do that, the budget does include an anticipated amount of about $160,000 to be collected from development fees from developers when they approach LIFT for a project. So we do have a cash flow eventually that we'll do. We have 2 projects that we're working with. They're a little bit more behind schedule than we anticipated at this point, but they're still active. So we're still working toward that. We hope to have something toward the end of the year or the beginning of next year as well. So that's where we are in the process. As far as expenses are concerned, again, the LIFT budget was about $100,000, and of which we have spent about $63,000, which is roughly about where we anticipated to be at this point in time of the year. As far as anything extraordinary, as you're all aware, the City of Littleton and LIFT had an arbitration hearing with Arapahoe County over their interpretation of the impact reports for the various urban renewal areas. We won that arbitration, by the way, but that was very costly. We had legal fees that were incurred in that, and also expert testimony that had to be brought in from our consultants that we use to do the plans. As far as since that time, the last several months, May through August, the average monthly expenses for LIFT have been about $2,000. So the costs have been reined in considerably, and we think we're probably on the right track here as far as getting our costs lined up. We're also working with city staff to expand our cooperation agreement to hopefully get some administrative service support from the city so that we don't have to pay a lot of money for that type of thing, as well as kind of blending our website together, which we think will be a big plus as well. Any questions?
Okay, Council, any questions for Director Reese? Okay, thank you, Jim. And this is a motion not requiring public hearing, correct? Correct. Okay. So, Council, looking for either discussion or a motion?
I move to authorize a draw of $50,000 to LIFT in accordance with the December 16, 2014 cooperation and loan agreement between the City of Littleton and LIFT.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second regarding an authorization of an advance. Council, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Council, with that, we're at adjournment for this evening.
All right. Cool.